beauty can position you and give you favor. Now, a lot of the times we see this in our everyday lives, and culture has coined the term pretty privileged. Hi guys, I pray that you are well. Today's video is called Stewarding the Power of Beauty as a Christian Woman. Now, before I get started, I want to first clarify what I mean by beauty. I like to distinguish beauty from seduction, manipulation, and lust. Oftentimes in the Christian community, we have demonized beauty because our definition of beauty is rooted in this idea of manipulation, of seduction, and of lust. And so I want to be clear and define exactly what I mean by beauty and make that distinction. When I speak of beauty, I am referring to the essence that brings a smile and soothes a crying baby. I am talking about beauty that garners a compliment from an elderly lady in a grocery store. I am talking about beauty that makes a prepubescent girl study your every move. I am talking about a smile that has the power to brighten someone's day and ease their anxiety. When I am speaking about beauty, I'm speaking about beauty that captivates and intrigues those who encounter it. I am not talking about seductive and lustful clothing and enhancements that would make you or others feel uncomfortable in different settings. That is a mockery to the intention of God's beauty. However, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I think our culture shows us that that form and that mockery of beauty does hold some level, some measure of power. But again, I want to be clear that in this video, that is not what I mean when I am using the term beauty and when I am speaking of the power of beauty. People are naturally attracted to beauty. It's simply how we are wired as humans. So we are drawn to a beautiful sunset, a beautiful ocean. We are drawn to beautiful flowers and beautiful landscapes and mountains. It's simply how we are wired. We love to see God's handiwork and His splendor and His expression. And beauty gives us hope, it gives us consolation, and it allows us to encounter an aspect of God. And so if you know a beautiful woman, I want you to stop right now, send this to her and say, girl, I was thinking about you, okay? Any beautiful woman that you know who is a Christian, or maybe she's not a Christian, any beautiful woman that you know and you believe that God is using her beauty to glorify Him, to continue to build the kingdom, to be an asset, and that you believe and you want to continue to see that woman using her beauty with integrity and stewarding her beauty with integrity and with honor, I want you to send this video to her right now. Whether we want to accept it as right or wrong, people are drawn to beauty. And this includes beautiful women. And God understands this, and this is evidenced all throughout Scripture. And I want to acknowledge that the enemy, he understands this too, and that is also evidenced through Scripture. And today in this video, we are going to be exploring what it means to steward the power of your beauty as a Christian woman. Once you get the revelation that God uses your beauty, it will change how you steward it. I want to start with a story about my first grade teacher, because believe it or not, I didn't realize, but it was such a influential moment in my life in learning about beauty. So I have my first grade teacher. Her name was Ms.Book. I know, it's so ironic her name was Ms.Book. Her name was Ms.Book, and I just thought Ms.Book was so beautiful. And me having her as my teacher, it taught me that subconsciously taught me that a woman can be beautiful and intelligent. And I didn't even realize it, but that's the message that it brought. And so every day that Ms.Book would teach, she was always toting a kiwi. She would have a kiwi in her hand, and she would walk up and down between the desk, and she would talk, she would teach, and she would hold this kiwi. And this was during the 90s. So this was over like 20 something years ago. And at this time, you know, the most healthy thing that I could think of was like the fruit cocktail that's in the corn syrup. We didn't really eat fresh fruit. We didn't really drink water and things like that. And so I remember going to the grocery store and asking my mother for kiwi. And I wanted this kiwi because I believed that if I ate the kiwi, it would make me in some way, shape, or form like Ms.Book. That some way I would be intelligent and I would be beautiful just like Ms.Book. And although the outside of the skin was furry and I didn't really know if I liked it, I just embraced it and I ate it with joy and with pride each time, because her eating that influenced me. And so that's the power of beauty that I am speaking of. It just dawned on me, and I was so humbled by it, but it just dawned on me because I serve the youth at my church. And I was continuously thinking about this story of Ms.Book, and I just still to this day, I hold her to just such high honor. I actually Google her, and over like 25 years or so later, she's still at the same school and she still looks stunning. I can't believe that after all these years she just looks this good. But I served the youth at the youth ministry within my church, and one little girl came up to me and she was like, "You're so pretty." And it was in that moment that God just kind of revealed to me, like, hey, you being here and these little girls viewing you as beautiful, as attractive, like my word in your faith, that's your kiwi. That's your kiwi. And just by you showing up, you are subconsciously teaching these little girls that you can be beautiful, you can be intelligent, and you can have a strong relationship with God. And you can wear your faith with pride and with honor. And so even when I beat myself up and I feel like I'm not being, super effective, or I feel stretched thin, God is like, your presence and what you stand for is so much more influential than you think. And I'd like to dedicate this video to all of the beautiful Christian women out there. I am so inspired by you. I mean, literally every day on YouTube, I see such a beautiful Christian woman. Sometimes I click and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so pretty. And then I'll click and it'll be like such an amazing and powerful woman of God. So I want to dedicate this video to all of you guys that are out there. I love you. If you know a beautiful Christian YouTuber that you love, I want you to comment them and put their name in the comments, put their channel in the comments. So I just want to honor you. I love you all. And if you know another beautiful woman, send this video to her ASAP. Beauty is a gift, and like anything that God gives us, it's our responsibility to steward it correctly. As women, we have to understand the mantle and the responsibility that comes with the beauty that God has given us. Beauty is a gift. And just like any gift from God, we have a responsibility to steward that gift appropriately. We have to understand the influence that we have inadvertently on others. And before we get started, I want to talk about stewarding beauty, and I want to define it because in this video I'm going to be using stewardship in two ways. Okay, so I want to define it. The first way that I'm speaking of stewardship is how you carry your body, how you maintain your body. So diet, exercise, self-care. That is like stewarding the beauty that God has given you. Viewing your body as a temple and seeing beauty as something that you have to manage, that you have to steward, that you are responsible for maintaining. The second way in which I am referring to stewardship is simply understanding the responsibility of having beauty. Understanding the influence, understanding the mantle, understanding the responsibility, and understanding how you impact those around you, and walking in integrity and not manipulating beauty for personal gain and things of that sort. So I'm speaking of stewardship in two ways. One, your responsibility to understand the mantle, your influence, and to walk in integrity. And then number two is stewarding and being responsible for how you treat yourself, right? Diet, exercise, healthy practices to maintain and sustain and be a great steward of the measure of beauty that God has given you. So I'm going to get right into my first point. You ready? And the first point is, and we're going to be diving deep into scripture, so feel free to comment if you can think of anything in scripture where you see how God is teaching us about beauty. Feel free to comment. But my first point is beauty can position you and give you favor. Now, a lot of the times we see this in our everyday lives, and culture has coined the term pretty privileged. But from a biblical perspective, what we see unequivocally is that beauty can position you and beauty can give you favor. And I'm going to be speaking about two specific instances in scripture where we see this. Now, the first one everyone knows about, Esther, right? So in the book of Esther 2, if we look at Esther 2 verses 7 through 9, we see very clearly that Esther is beautiful, and we see that her beauty positions her to a better place in the harem, and that her beauty gets her special food and special beauty treatments. So we see that her beauty moves her to a better place in the harem. It gets her better treatment. And so immediately we see that, because the text clearly mentions that she's beautiful and that she has a lovely figure. And then it tells her that she gained favor, and that favor led her to being placed in the best place in the harem and receiving special food and beauty treatments. That after I got this revelation, I'm like, listen, Esther, it says that Esther she was beautiful and she had a lovely figure, okay? And I got convicted because I'm like, okay, God gives a lot of us, he gave us blessings with the face card, but the lovely figure part is something that you have to steward. And I remember one of my colleagues told me about ClassPass. I got on ClassPass and I started going to different gyms and Pilates classes and things of that sort. And I love it because you are able to try out different places. And this is for everyone. The first month is free. So you can literally go to like a ton of classes for free for an entire month. So Pilates classes, bar, you can try so many different things. And so I love it because if you've just moved to a new city and you're not really sure what's around, you get to try out all of these different places. It's also great if you are traveling. You can go to different places and just see, like, hey, I don't know what's around here. I don't know what gyms are around here. Or I don't know what classes are around here. It's great because the app just shows you the classes. And like I said, for that first month, you can be free. I'm also going to link in the description box below where you can sign up with my link. So I highly encourage you to do it. It's completely free the first month. You can go to literally like all of these classes the first month. Like, I could not believe it. And so if you don't want to be charged, all you have to do is cancel it before that first month. It's right on the app. You don't have to call or email. You just click the button and say, I want to cancel. So I encourage you to just try it. I will warn you though, it is addicting, but it's free. So if you're on a budget and you want to start incorporating, you're like, hey, you feel convicted about more diet and more exercise, I encourage you, at least for the first month, y'all, to try ClassPass. It's free for the first month. Just, yeah. So that's the first instance that we see in the book of Esther. We see that beauty can position you and give you favor. The second instance is Abraham's wife, or during this stage in Genesis, Genesis 12, he's referred to as Abram, and she's referred to as Sarai. And so during this time, Abram and Sarai are traveling, and Sarai is so beautiful that the people in the town begin to tell the Pharaoh about her. Let's take a look at the scripture. It says, when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace. He treated Abram well for her sake, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female servants, and camels. So we see that Sarai is positioned because of her beauty. So they heard about her beauty. She's immediately taken to the palace. She must have been stunning. I can't imagine. She's immediately taken to the palace. And then her and Abraham acquires all of these things, right? Acquires all of these things on account of her beauty. And so in no way did God approve of Abraham or Abram lying, right? But if we were to take a look at this text, what it shows is that point, that beauty positions and beauty gives you favor. And Abraham understood that. He understood the power of beauty. He didn't say, hey, Sarai, I want you to, make yourself look ugly, cover up your face so nobody will see you. He understood that her beauty would garner them favor as a form of God's protection and provision during this transition in the season of during this season of their life. He knew that it was favor. And so I think that's such a testament. A lot of the times we see a lot of Christians who are actually controlling, and they try to use religion as a reason to demonize beauty, right? But again, in no way, shape, or form do we condone seduction, manipulation, and lust. But beauty is a gift from God. Point number 2 is beauty is not for your own benefit. And we see this again. You cannot talk about beauty without talking about the book of Esther. And one of the most famous Bible verses in the book of Esther is, people always quote, for such a time as this, right? You were called when Mordecai tells Esther, you were called for such a time as this. But really what Mordecai is doing in the text is the Jews are in a very sticky situation, right? Her beauty positioned her and gave her favor in the palace, so she had influence. And he told her the full scripture. He says, for if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. And so in a nutshell, what we see from that is that Mordecai is telling her, like, your beauty and your positioning is not just for you, but God could be using it to position you to benefit the Jews, to deliver his people, to accomplish his will. Mordecai sobers her and reminds her that, hey, this is just not about you having a glamorous life and attracting powerful men. He reminds her that, hey, this is for a reason. God has given you this gift and this positioning for a reason, and it's your responsibility to steward it and understand the moment that you're standing in. He reminds her that her beauty is not for her own benefit. And so we see this throughout scripture in different judgments that the Lord declares. And there's a couple that stand out specifically in the book of Ezekiel, because let's remember that the enemy, Satan was very beautiful, and God's charge, his judgment against him, was that he became puffed up and he wanted to use his beauty for his own benefit, to get his own glory and not to glorify God. And so there's a specific scripture that stands out to me in the book of Ezekiel. And when the Lord is speaking judgment against Satan, and he says in Ezekiel 16 verse 14, and your fame spread among the nations on account of your beauty, because the splendor I had given you made your beauty perfect, declares the Lord. Then down in the 49th verse, and this is a judgment prophecy to Jerusalem, he says, now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. They were haughty and did detestable things before me. Therefore, I did away with them, as you have seen. And so this reminds me of the day of this age, where you see a lot of beautiful women, and this is not to disparage anyone, but if we look at society, what is mainstream is this idea of using beauty for your own benefit, of being overfed and unconcerned. So we see a lot of overconsumption. We see, women simply dating men of influence for bags and houses and vacations. And there's nothing wrong with those things, but there's a lack of understanding of the philanthropic call, right? Of how to use your influence and how to use your positioning and how to use the gifts that God has given you to create change, to serve your community, to uplift, to have initiatives that speak to the cry and answer the cry of God's people. And so in Ezekiel, in the 16th chapter, we see God saying this. This is his judgment to Jerusalem. He says, listen, on account of your beauty, you got puffed up and you're overfed and unconcerned. And so this shows us the parameters that God sets and how he views beauty and when he feels like it's being perverted and manipulated. And he doesn't like that. Okay? So, point number 3 is Beauty void of other characteristics is useless and vain. And so again, we see this all throughout Scripture. In fact, most of the beautiful women in the Bible that God uses, we see that Scripture highlights their other attributes that demonstrate a high level of integrity and character. We see it with Esther. We also see it with Abigail, right? And so this is why in Proverbs 31:30, everyone loves to quote Proverbs 31, right? This famous verse, I'm sure most of you know it, but it says, charm is deceptive, beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Now, this verse is not saying that a Proverbs 31 woman is not beautiful. This verse is not saying that a Proverbs 31 woman does not have charm. It doesn't mean that she's void of it. But what it's saying is the qualifying factor, the most important factor, is that she fears the Lord. And I think sometimes as Christian we demonize beauty, and I've seen this scripture, to my understanding, I've seen it abused to demonize beauty, but that's not what this is saying. This is saying that the most valuable asset is fearing the Lord. So beauty, which is a gift from God, charm, which is also a gift from God, should be accompanied with a fear of the Lord, because without it, it's useless, it's vain. And so when you have these other characteristics, when you have the fruits of the Spirit and you're walking with God, and you also have the gift of beauty, it's so powerful and transformative. We see this in 1 Samuel 25. One of my most favorite rock stars, favorite characters in the Bible is Abigail. And in 1 Samuel 25, we learn that Abigail was very beautiful and she was intelligent. That's what the scripture says. It says that she was beautiful and intelligent. And I love Abigail. I don't think she gets enough credit as a prophet, right? And so I encourage you to read 1 Samuel 25. But in that text, we see that she's beautiful, we see that she's intelligent, but we also see that she has a close relationship with God. She gives and delivers a rhema word to David during his wilderness season before he is king, right? And so she is originally, if you don't know the story, I'm going to keep it brief. I encourage you to read 1 Samuel 25. But she's originally married to a very rich man named Nabal, who is a fool. Now, I'm sure that it was her beauty that also led her to marry this very wealthy man, right? But, you know, he was a fool. He had an encounter with a disagreement with David, and Nabal did not function in wisdom. Abigail saves the day. She delivers a wise and graceful word to David. And he tells Abigail, listen, you have kept me from bloodshed, right? So her wisdom, her beauty, her grace, her relationship with God saved her entire household from being killed. But not only did it do that, David then came back to marry Abigail. And I want you to understand like how powerful this is. He married Abigail. Her beauty and her accompanied with her intelligence and her relationship with God landed her the ear of the king of Israel, because David became the king of Israel. How powerful is that? Right? Because in that moment he listened to her and he says, thank you, you have prevented me from bloodshed. And that's the end of the story that we hear, right? But the reality is that she was an advisor to David as a king. She had the ear of the king of Israel. that is huge. And I think that's something that we overlook a lot in that text. But that's something that really stands out to me is the power of her beauty, and how it not just saved her in that moment, but I can only imagine how she influenced some of his policies and decision making throughout his rule. Because what we see in 1 Samuel 25 is that David viewed her as very wise. He viewed her as someone who had a relationship with God. He viewed her as someone that he would listen to. And so I think that's just so powerful. That takes me to my next point number 4, which is beauty gives you power, right? So Abigail has the ear of the king of Israel, which is David. We see in Esther 2 that she has the ear of the king of Persia, King Ahasuerus, King Xerxes. And, read the book of Esther to really follow that story if you're not familiar. I know a lot of people are familiar with the story, but the power of her beauty not only delivered all of the Jews from being killed, but in the book of Esther, in the I believe it's in the 8th chapter, yes, verse 17, it says, "In every province and in every city to which the edict of the king came, there was joy and gladness among the Jews, with feasting and celebrating, and many people of other nationalities became Jews, because fear of the Jews had seized them." So her beauty, accompanied with the other characteristics that God had given her, right? Her submitted beauty, her beauty that she stewarded and yielded to God, it resulted in not only the Jews being saved from annihilation, it resulted in many other people becoming Jews. And it also resulted in how Jews were viewed amongst their neighboring provinces. People feared them, people respected them, and it was all because the beauty of a woman named Esther. That is powerful. Point number 5 is you cannot idolize beauty. Okay? Do not idolize beauty. Because when we idolize beauty, it's also accompanied with overconsumption and obsessiveness. And you create this anxiety, to be beautiful, to where as though if you get a pimple, it's the end of the world. Or you spend, hundreds and thousands of dollars trying to be beautiful, and this is when you start to idolize it, and it's not natural anymore. And so we see in the book of Esther that she does not engage in overconsumption, right? And so I know a lot of people that are, just abuse the Christian religion, try to say, makeup is a sin. And we see in the book of Esther that that's not true, right? Overconsumption may not be, in the will of God. But we see in Esther that it says, Esther 2, verses 12 to 15, it says, "Before a young woman's turn came to go in to King Xerxes, she had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments prescribed for the women, 6 months with oil and myrrh, and 6 with perfumes and cosmetics. And this is how she would go to the king. Anything she wanted was given to her with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening she would go there, and in the morning return to another part of the harem to the care of Sheshgaz, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the concubines. She would not return to the king unless he was pleased with her and summoned her by name. When the turn came for Esther, the young woman Mordecai had adopted, the daughter of his uncle Abihail, to go to the king, she asked for nothing other than what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the harem, suggested. And Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. So it shows in the text that Esther did not engage in overconsumption. It says that she did not ask for more than what was suggested or advised to her. So it's very important, because when you realize that beauty is powerful, it's easy to idolize it. It's easy to get stuck into the trap of overconsumption. And I just want to warn you not to do that. Why? One, because beauty is fleeting, right? Beauty is like a mantle. It's like a flower that fades, right? And so while you have, maybe you have the mantle of beauty right now, and then years later, your daughter will have that mantle. Your granddaughter will have that mantle. And so it's important that while you have that baton for this season, that you steward your beauty with honor, with integrity, that influences the next generation of young, beautiful young women. Yes, so I want to remind you guys, don't fall into the trap of overconsumption, but also understand makeup and caring about the way you look is not a sin, right? We see that in the book of Esther. We see that in the book of Ruth, right? And so if you are not familiar with the story of Ruth, Ruth follows her mother-in-law, Naomi. She says, your God will be my God. Your people will be my people, after they both suffer extreme loss. And so Ruth follows the instructions of this woman of God, Naomi. And when Ruth meets Boaz, who is her potential husband, who she ends up marrying, remember that Naomi tells her, she says, put on your best clothes and your perfume. So this is godly instruction. This is godly advice telling her, hey, put on your best clothes and put on perfume, right? And that act of obedience led her to being in the lineage of the birth of Jesus. So when we look at the genealogy in the Bible and they say, such and such begat such and such begat this person begat that person, right? Ruth is included in that lineage from having the son Jesse. She has the son Jesse. Her and Boaz end up getting married, and they have Jesse, and Jesse has David. You know that Jesus comes from the lineage of David, right? So I say all of that to say that beauty is so powerful. It is not a sin, right? But we have to be grounded and remember not to engage in overconsumption. Don't idolize it, and to understand the responsibility that comes with it. So if this video blessed you, I want to make a request of you. Please sow to my channel, guys. It would mean the world to me. Whatever you can, please sow. I'm going to put the information on the screen. You can Cash App CieraGodisHere, or you can use PayPal, Ciera@GodisHereMedia.com. For those of you who are just curious to learn more about me, I am also going to link my personal website. So if you just want to learn and be like, who is this chick, right? I'm going to put that information in the box as well, www.CieraDaniel.com. So you can learn about some of the things that I'm passionate about, that I'm currently working on as well. I pray that this message blessed you. I pray that it encouraged you. And once again, if you haven't already, I'm going to remind you one last time, send this video to a beautiful woman. All right, guys, be blessed.